So, Gary, do you think that you're considered a talker?
I would definitely say that I am a talker.
Do you think that I'm a talker?
When you want to be, when you're comfortable with somebody, then I would definitely say that you're a talker.
I don't even think that's the case. I think it's more so if I have something to say, I can be a talker. I'm not going to really talk unless I actually have something to say.
I'll agree with that. I think that, when you have something to say and you feel comfortable with the person, then you're definitely a talker.
Being comfortable with more so centers around how much I'm actually going to talk about. I mean, I can talk to someone I'm not comfortable with, but it just depends on how much I'm actually going to expose.
Right. And I think that that's the biggest thing is how much you're willing to expose, which has a lot to do with your comfortability or your comfort with that person.
Yeah. And I mean, it also goes into how I communicate or how you communicate when being a talker, because you can be a talker and just ramble, or you can actually talk and have a purpose.
Yeah, I definitely have a problem with rambling at times. I can agree with that.
I have to have a purpose. I don't like rambling. I mean, but that showcases the differences in how we communicate, which is what we're going to talk about next.
Exactly. So let's jump right on in this thing, shall we?
Let's get into another episode of Black Relativity.
Ladies and gentlemen,
where we discuss all topics, tribulations, and issues that are experienced within the Black community, from the standard to the most controversial. No filters, no boundaries, just real talk. This is Black Relativity with your hosts, Gary and Shireen Mariner.
So I bet that Shireen is probably going to have a bunch of things to clown on me about when it comes down to communication.
I try not to.
Just because my understanding of what communication really was and wasn't has changed and grown in this relationship. I'll be very honest with you. Being a single guy, I really felt like there wasn't really much that I needed to do to communicate, to get you to understand. It was kind of surface level. And
what do you mean by surface level?
Well, I told you what you needed to know. And I didn't have to tell you a lot of things that were too in depth, or I didn't have to go into things that were too in depth with you just because this was just
something. Me specifically?
Well, no, with anybody. I mean, that was just how I felt. Clearly, my understanding was wrong. I did speak about a lot. I let people in a lot more than sometimes I should have. And that caused me a couple problems in different relationships, but it is what it is.
Meaning that people that you weren't in a relationship with, you let in, as far as telling them a lot of different things that you probably shouldn't have and should have kept in your relationship at the time. Is that what you are referring to?
Relationship and friendships. I can definitely say that I did that because I would consider myself like an open book. I'm going to tell you everything about myself because I feel like from a general standpoint, even being a father, I feel as though the lessons that I've learned in my life and the things that I've gone through can help someone else to make sure that they don't deal with the same things. But sometimes when you open up like that to either a friend or someone that you're in a relationship with, they can take advantage of you.
But then they wouldn't be a friend then. I mean, and that's one of the reasons why I'm not too open with people just right off the bat. It's just not, unless I'm comfortable with you. And it really has to do with the energy that is being put out. If our energies match and I can kind of see that we would actually really get along and you seem like a genuinely good person, that you would be a good friend, then I would start to open up to you. If not, then, I'd kind of keep it surface level too.
See, my thing is, I really always looked at people as though everybody was good. I didn't really look at, if you came across me, I didn't really feel as though there was going to be something that you were going to do wrong by me. And so I would definitely say I was a little bit gullible, and people definitely took advantage of that.
I don't think that's a matter of just being gullible. You have a very optimistic personality. So you're always looking at the positive of things. Not to say that I look at the negative, but I just have to have that connection. There has to be a connection. If there's not a connection, I don't feel that there's a need for me to really expose everything. And I'm pretty sure that person is not going to expose everything to me without there being some sort of connection or being comfortable with each other. And I don't think people are just bad. It's just that connection may not be there. And if that connection is not there, why am I telling you all my business?
I think, the connection aspect of it is big, but also there's what I call the receptionist that you meet in the beginning. You know, you never really meet the true person on the inside. They always let you see
Talking about that representative.
Yeah, you always see the representative. That's the first person that everyone meets. And I think that until you get past that representative and get to meet the person in the background that's hiding from the rest of the world, you know, that has whatever issues that they may have or, you know, beliefs and whatever the case may be, until you meet that person, you really don't know who you're talking to.
You see, that's the whole difference in, just like we talked about in the previous episode, why I tend to become friends with somebody first before I get into a relationship. When you're in a relationship, if you're just jumping straight to the relationship part, you tend to hide certain things because you don't want to push that person away right at the beginning. You don't want to scare them off or anything. But friends are typically a little bit more open with each other because there's really no risk of saying, you know, oh, I don't want to be with you. I don't want to be in a relationship with you. Or, you know, I don't want to be friends with you. You know, you understand in friendships that you have differences. But because of that, you're allowed to be a bit more open. So when you do get into the relationship aspect, you already know everything about the person because you learned that through the friendship part.
And I think that's a level of communication that I've always missed out on, which is the reason why my communication suffered so much in the beginning of our relationship. You know, I didn't have that build up time where I got to know the person that I was with. And even when we first, you know, decided to get together, although we did talk a lot, you know,
I was trying to be friends with you and find out about you. And, you know, even with, you know, relationships you may have been in and how things were going, I tried to just find out and let you know what was going on with me as a friend.
And I never had an experience where I did something like that with anyone. So for me, it was just, you know, the workings of getting towards the relationship that was oncoming in my mind.
Felt that it was like a dating aspect to get to the relationship part.
Yep. In my mind, that's all it ever really is just the setup to the ultimate goal.
So were you dating me before we actually got into a relationship? Because I wasn't dating you.
Yeah, I pretty much was. I mean, you know, in my mind, anytime that I sit there and invest the time, invest the, you know, mental capability and disclose so much information to a person that, you know, I would feel is either detrimental or, you know, let you know too much about me, then this is now more than just, okay, we just talking, we just friends. And that's only because I've never had a female other than my cousin or my sisters who I've disclosed that type of information to.
Well, you have female friends, right?
I have female friends now that I open up to, but, you know, half of them were either someone that I've either dated or been, you know, in a relationship with in the past. And so they know about those things. They were there during those times. But other than that, if you weren't a part of those times, it's very, very slim to none that you know anything about me or that you're connected to me in any way.
So what would you say the difference is in your communication from when you were single versus now that you're married?
Well, I think it has a lot more of, you know, I learned the value of listening and not just listening just to be there, but actively listening. And that's, you know, a skill that comes over time and with a lot of practice, that I have to not only listen to what you're saying, but understand what you're saying and how I may have played a part in what you're discussing with me, or what it is that I bring to what you're talking about, how I may have played a role, how I may be at fault, taking ownership for where I may have, you know, been short or, you know, did something wrong or caused the situation to be what it is, and learning from what we're discussing how I can be better, what I can do to change, or what I can add to make it better or to help you feel, you know, as though I'm there with you. You know, in the beginning, when you listen to the whole ideology of there's a shoulder to cry on, a lot of times when I was a kid, I didn't want my mother or, you know, the adult that I was talking to, I didn't want you to talk. I just wanted you to shut up and listen. I wanted to vent. And so, because in my mind, that was what I needed. I didn't think that anyone needed more from me than what I needed from them. I just needed you to shut up, be quiet, and listen to what's going on so I can get it off my chest. And the moment that I get it off my chest, I feel better about what I'm dealing with because I've now vented. So
And that's because that almost makes me think that you were looking for someone outside of just listening, so this way you could vent, but that you didn't want anybody to be judgmental about what it is that you're telling them, and that
exactly.
you wanted them to just take it for face value so you could just move on.
Right. And a lot of times I ended up, when having those types of conversations where I just vented, I realized that I ended up hurting people with some of the things that I said. Not that it was something specific to them, but it was that I didn't have care in who I was speaking with. And at the same time, they did not have an open mind enough to hear what I was saying and not take it some type of way.
And that's something that we had to learn in our marriage, as far as being able to have that open mind in what the person is saying and not get offended or anything like that when it comes to whatever we're discussing, and being able to work towards the solution to whatever the problem is.
Yeah, I can definitely say that I was pretty bad at that.
Yes.
Yeah. Truth be told.
I mean, yeah, you were bad with that.
Call it what it is.
There's not much more I can say to that. But I mean, we got to a better place with it, and I know that just in our communications, we would have a lot of talks about how we communicate with each other, or our lack of communication in the beginning, and how bad our communication was. I know for me, me being single versus being married, I learned how to try to work through problems. I remember just a thought process that I had after I had gotten married, that when I got mad at Gary, if I got mad at him, he did something that just really made me upset, I couldn't just say, okay, it's over. I mean, I couldn't just walk away. We're married now. I can't, there's a whole process if I wanted to break up with him. So that wasn't something that I could do like you could do when you're in a relationship. You have to try to figure out how to work through to a solution, provided that the problem is not, astronomical. You try to work through a solution. But we got there, and we learned that, or at least I believe that we learned that in our communications, we try not to be judgmental of the other person. We try to be very open and honest with how we feel. And I think that's something that we talked with each other about. This way we can try to fully understand the other person and work toward a solution.
See, I think the open mind aspect of being in a relationship is key. Not being judgmental of the other person because the way they think is different than you.
And being open mind is more so along the lines of knowing that someone is not going to always think the way that you think, and the way that they think has to do with different factors, the way they were taught growing up, or experiences that they may have had. Just knowing that a person may think differently, and just being open to understanding that this is the way this person thinks. So, okay, let me figure out how to approach or communicate with this person that has this type of thinking.
And on top of that, you have to have a level of maturity. And I would definitely say that my maturity has grown exponentially in this relationship, because a lot of things that I would do being single was really immature. Either being hurt and then you turn around and cheat on somebody, or they cheat on you, or then being immature, you do the tit for tat and try and turn around and cheat back on them if you really want to work it out, but now you just want to hurt them,
Or just having a lack of trust of the other person as well.
And not only when you speak of trust that way, but trust also in believing that you actually care enough to want to make this right. And that's something that I had to learn with you, was that you weren't trying to hurt me. You were really, you had my best interest at heart. I hurt you, and you were trying to figure out a way to make this work. And I couldn't see past my own pain in the beginning. And the maturity of realizing that I play a part in this. What was the part that I played? Taking ownership of it and looking at the other person and them also being mature enough to take ownership of their part and then try and sit down with you in a respectful manner and try and figure it out.
Because a lot of times in communication and relationships, you'll see people that want to blame one or the other person. That the whole thing is because of the other person, this other person's fault, and the other individual has nothing to do with it. So I agree. Both people have to look at what part they played in it.
Yeah, I definitely can say that. Learning that each person plays a part in every single issue in the relationship, especially in a marriage. It doesn't matter how small or how big it is. You played a role. There's something that you didn't do. There's something that you overlooked. There's something that you weren't paying attention to. Or as a guy, I'll be honest, there's just something that I just didn't listen to. I completely did not pay attention to you, which then causes further issues down the line. And being mature enough and honest enough to know that that's what's going on. And that's the reason why my wife is mad at me, or that's the reason why your husband may be mad at you. That's a part of growth, but that, specifically has to deal with the communication and how you work through your problems.
And that comes with maturity. Like you mentioned, you have to kind of grow into that. And one thing that I can definitely say that I value in me and Gary's communication is that I can't even really say that me and Gary have ever had an argument since we've been married. As when you look at what you would think an argument is, where you're kind of just going back and forth with each other. We don't yell at each other or anything like that. And that, people may think that that's odd. But, in the 8 years that we've been married, 10 years that we've been together, we have not argued like that. It's just not how we communicate with each other. And for me, that's because when I talk with Gary, I have to have a purpose. There has to be a goal in mind. I'm not just talking about a situation or a problem just to vent to you or just to tell my side. I have a goal. I have something that I'm trying to reach to make the situation better. So when I'm talking, that's what I'm working towards.
See, when you think about the value of communication, speaking on those specific things that you just mentioned, Shireen, you have to look into how your past, your present, the circle that you're around plays a part in what you do and do not do with the person that you're with.
Definitely.
I have a history of being around people who were verbally abusive to each other, had no regard, complete disregard for each other's feelings, personal space, emotional stability or lack thereof, and just would brutalize each other on a day-to-day basis. Most of the people that I was around and this is probably something that people always mistake for people from New York. They say that we're just loud. It's not that we're loud, but 9 times out of 10, there's so much noise going around that you have to yell all the time. And we get used to different levels of yelling. So what we consider is us talking regular is considered yelling to other people. And when we yell, it's considered like, yo, you're going off the top. And it's like, no, we're just yelling. We're just talking loud.
Yeah, you do that.
Yeah. So one of the things that I've always said that I did not want to bring into a long-term relationship where I actually got married, had a family, got my kids in front of, I didn't want to be abusive in any way, shape, or form to my wife. I didn't want them to see that or feel as though that was acceptable in their home, and so I can't find it in myself to yell at my wife. I can't find it in myself to curse at my wife or to use derogatory verbs or adjectives when speaking about my wife, because I've got children who look at me as the example of how they should be to a woman.
And so you took your experience and looked at it as, this is what I don't want to do, and I want to do the opposite.
Yeah.
And with me, I've not once seen my parents argue, ever. And I'm pretty sure they may have, but they kept it away from me or my brother. I've never seen them argue, so that's not something that I would mimic or anything. Even people in my family, I've never seen them really argue or anything like that. So that's something that I just kind of picked up. So, and you'll see people out there who may have experiences like what Gary has experienced, and then they choose to mimic that because that's all they know, that's all they see. And they don't look at it and say, okay, this is what I don't want. And that kind of makes me, I don't want to say it makes me question, but it makes me curious about what made you decide to do the opposite versus kind of just mimicking what it is that you saw growing up.
Well, I think that goes back to something that we also talked about in a previous episode where Shireen, please go back and listen to this, where she laughed at me about being the movie emotional guy.
Oh, Lord. Yeah.
I always wanted that movie fairy tale relationship,
So you mimicked what you saw. You wanted to mimic what you saw in movies.
Actually, I wanted to create something that I didn't see in movies because I don't remember seeing a black household other than the Cosbys.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't see a black household that was dealing with real life-ish, who didn't have all of the money in the world, who didn't have all of that education, because I don't have a college degree. I don't have all those accolades that the Cosbys had. I don't have all those things that you would see in one of those, upper middle class, upper class TV shows that we used to watch as a kid. So because I didn't see it, I wanted to create it. I wanted to have a household where the kids looked at the way that the mother and father treated each other and was like, well, that's the real world. Even though my experience and most of the people that I know, their experiences, that's not real. That's a fairy tale. And so I wanted to figure out how to create that. And I guess because there was always that desire within me, when I realized, or I should say, when I swallowed my own ego, which is another aspect that can really, screw up the communication in your relationship. When I swallowed my own ego and decided to really understand where you were coming from, then our communication got so much better.
And how was your ego since you brought that up?
I mean,
I feel like I'm interviewing you, but
it's cool. It's cool. Me being a Leo, I got a big ego. I am loud and proud. And at the same time, when you cross me or when you get me mad, that's the last side you want to be on. I don't, and Shireen knows, I don't have a problem with cutting you off. As far as if you do something wrong to me, and I even tell my kids, and anybody who knows me knows that I say this, you get 3 strikes and then you're out. Once you hit that 3rd strike, you are dead to me. You never existed in this world. I don't care if you're burning, I won't piss on you to save your life.
Yeah, you're very cutthroat.
Yeah, I'm very cutthroat. So my ego can get in the way of a lot of things, especially when I'm mad.
Well, I mean, how does your ego come into play when it comes to communication and what we may talk about or what I may say to you if we're talking about a particular issue or problem that touches on your ego?
Well, for example, in the beginning of our relationship, before my maturity grew and I got a little bit better with handling our conversations, how am I supposed to know that I did something wrong? Fuck you mean? Nah, this is your fault. You fucked up.
Why would you automatically think that in a situation?
Because I didn't take the time to think about what part did I play in what it is that you're talking about. All I know is what I know. I don't know your side. So as far as I know, you the one who fucked up. Nah, get out of here. Who you talking to like that? And that's how I would respond normally in the past before our relationship.
Yeah. You would never respond like that. We would have a problem.
And see, that's the thing. Number one, I had to check myself at the door. I had to get myself.
But how does that change? I'm sorry to cut you off. I'm trying to figure out how does your mindset go from what you just said? No, I'm not a cursor, so I don't curse. From what you just said to now I'm gonna listen to your side without without there being a situation where you would have said that to me and we'd have a conversation about, no, that's not how we're going to communicate. Because we've never had a conversation saying as though you came at me like that and we had to address that right then. So I'm trying to figure out, when would something like that change in somebody?
The value that the other person holds within that person's mind. So your value was always very high to me. And that was something that you had to learn, because you didn't really understand why I took some of the positions that I took. Mm-hmm. And I didn't understand why you didn't take the positions that I took, because you had more value to me from the jump than I had with you, because you hadn't built up that friendship.
I don't even think it had to do with value. I just think that we're two different people, and we looked at things differently. And while you may have taken offense with something that may have been going on, I may have looked at it as, this is not even that serious, and your value may have been just as high as for me as mine was for you. We just are two different people, and it's just a matter of understanding where that other person is coming from. And I mean, there is also, a point where you have to take into consideration how somebody else feels about something. So you also have to look at that side and kind of get some sort of middle ground with that.
And I think that specifically talks about another level of communication and why there is such a divide in relationships, because people don't realize what you just talked about. That is super important, in not knowing that the person that you got involved with is not you. And both of y'all have different experiences in life. You understand things differently. The way that you do things before each other was different. Y'all came together and you're trying to create something between the two of you. So you have to accept who that person is.
Well, like I always say, I always look at someone to not necessarily, they don't have to agree with how I view things, but just understand it. That's always the biggest thing. I want somebody to understand where I'm coming from, even if they don't agree with it, because I don't expect you to agree with everything, because you have a different way of thinking. But as long as we're still showing that respect to each other, along with that understanding, then we can move to the point that we're trying to get to.
And I think you mentioned something really, really powerful. The aspect of being selfish.
Selfish with what?
So why do I care? Why do I have, or why should I put such importance into the way that you look at things? Because
are you referring to in a marriage or when you're single?
Well, before you even get to the marriage aspect, when you're single and you're just starting a relationship going towards the marriage aspect, why should I care? You have to grow past the way that I think is right all the time. And you have to learn the way that I do things, because I'm right. Because in my mind, I'm right.
Well, I think that the other person has to learn how the person that they're dating, how they do things. I agree with that, but not necessarily thinking that they're right, that the way that they do things is right. I mean,
now that sometimes is a testosterone thing. Guys are like that.
But then what is right? What is necessarily considered right? I mean, you have to look at individual situations. I mean, it could just be the way that someone does something, and it could be right or wrong. I mean, it doesn't have to be either or, really.
And I think that's another aspect that's important. No one's right, no one's wrong. You're both learning each other.
And both different.
Right. And when you're entering into a marriage or a serious relationship, learning or understanding that the other person brings something to the table, and it means something to learn from them while also giving your input, which is part of a compromise. Communication, every time that you communicate, is a compromise. And when you realize that, and you start to, take acceptance or give acceptance for what the person brings to the table, and really listen to them and try and figure out together how the two of you can use what you know to make this thing better.
But I also think that it also helps to avoid a lot of arguments and back and forth between couples, when you're constantly communicating to let your significant other know why you feel the way that you feel, why you did something the way that you did, provided that they already have an understanding of your past, your experiences, and things that you've gone through, they'll have a better understanding and less likely to argue back and forth with you about why you did something the way that you did, why you said something the way that you said it. They'll know where that came from and can have more of an understanding, more sympathy to what the situation is.
Now, another thing, you keep bringing up all these gems, so I got to speak on them. One of the things that I do appreciate about you in our relationship is you studied me like a book, and you know why I do some of the things that I do when I do them. You know what my trigger points are.
Even if I don't like them.
But see, that's the thing. You understand me. And it's better for you to understand me because you know, all right, the reason why Gary's acting like this right now is because of X, Y, and Z. All right, so let me talk to him real quick, or blah, blah, blah. Or let me help him to understand, because I can't read things sometimes as well as you can. And you help me to understand in situations where I normally would not.
Yeah, it's just like looking at situations if you've had a bad day or you not in a good mood or something like that. And I can tell by how you may react to certain things. And I know that when you're in a good mood, you react differently. And while in the bad mood and the bad reactions, you may not actually realize that that's the reason why you're acting that way. Exactly. And so I'll bring it to you and say, hey, because I know that that's not how you want to be.
And most of the time that happens because when I'm, not feeling my best or I've been pissed off or work has, got me, aggy, I'm tunnel vision and I can only see things the way that I see them at that particular time. And it's cool to have the level of communication that we have where you can pull my coat tag and be like, hey, what's going on?
And similar to when I may have a bad day or, dealing with just life as a mom, you're dealing with your child or your kids and you're dealing with work and everything. And you may be stressed out and I'll get to points where every little thing agitates me and I don't want to be bothered with anything. Somebody does something that may be very minor. I may, blow up at it or not really blow up, but, I'll just get really frustrated internally by it and I'll stress and get anxiety when if I wasn't in that type of mental space, I would actually kind of disregard it and be like, oh, okay, whatever. But you'll see that in me when I get to those points. And because you know me and because of our constant communications and getting to know each other and knowing how each other works, you'll see that in me and you'll do certain things like, you may take our son somewhere to kind of give me that break or whatever, or you may try to give me some time so I can meditate or something. Maybe you'll bring me some French fries and ice cream from McDonald's because that makes me feel good when I'm upset. I mean, something.
And it's those small things that really help a relationship grow because those small things help acknowledge that I see you. And a lot of the times, in communication and in relationships, not being seen and feeling like the person doesn't understand you causes frustration. And that can be a problem that is now created in your relationship that you now have to work through, and that then leads back to another part of communication. If you can't communicate about it, how are you going to grow?
Yeah, that makes me think about situations when either one of us may be upset at each other. And this is more so on me when I'm upset at Gary for
You're talking about whatever. When you just walk and leave out?
No, I mean, I do that too. But that's more so because when you want to relate that to communication, I don't want to say the wrong thing at that time. Because if I'm in that heat of the moment being upset, I can say the wrong thing. So I like to clear my head so this way I can approach you better and work toward a solution. But what I was going to say is more so when I'm upset and I shut down and I get quiet or I'll have one word responses to things because I don't want to be bothered. But I think in those times as well, I'm trying not to say the wrong thing and I'm trying to cool off. But the negative part of that is that Gary's not understanding what I may be upset about, if he did something wrong, if there's something that he can do to fix whatever the situation is, because I'm not saying anything. And I think that's something that I've heard a lot of women do that, and not express to the men, or even when they don't express what's wrong with them to their significant other, they expect the guy to already know what it is that they did wrong.
And I'm going to let y'all women know, we're not smart enough for that. Stop thinking that we're that smart. We're really not. We didn't pay attention in the jump.
I don't believe that. I think that y'all are smart enough to know when, if you know somebody, if you know them as well as you do, you know, like you mentioned earlier, you know what their trigger points are. You should know when you hit that trigger point and that person is upset.
I will give you that 50% of the time, we can figure it out. And the other 50% of the time, we're focused on other things that we didn't even see what caused you to get the way that you are. And that's the problem. Most people don't realize life gets in the way, and you may be focused on doing whatever you were doing, especially when you talk about working from home. If you're working from home and you're both dealing with each other and you're dealing with what you're dealing with, or you got kids at home and you're focused on what's going on with the kids and you didn't pay attention to what happened. I don't know what happened to you.
Shoot, if you're working from home, you should know even more. We're in each other's face all day long.
Go back.
Why don't you know?
Go back a couple minutes ago when I talked about tunnel vision. Okay. Tunnel vision, I don't see you. Especially if I'm sitting there.
That tells me a lot.
I'm focused on what I'm doing. Like if you're working, you're at the computer and you're focused on what you're doing. I'll say something to you. You don't even know that I talk to you.
Yes, I do.
But you'll turn around and you'll be like, huh? And I'm like, did you hear anything I said? No, I got something going. But I was talking to you.
Low. He was probably talking low.
Lies. Black woman. Anyway, but see, I'm the same way. When I get pissed off to the point where I'm about to blow my top, there are certain things that I'm going to go do. I'm going to go play video games. I'm going to go kill somebody. I got to go let out my anger.
You mean you're going to kill somebody in video games?
That's
Please
right.
make
I'm
that
going to go
clear.
kill somebody in video games.
It sounded like there was a comma in there.
No, I'm going to go play Call of Duty, and I'm going to go kill somebody. I'm going to play some Resident Evil or something crazy to take my mind out of it. I'm going to go watch a movie that's action-packed or something crazy so I can drift off in that world. And when that happens, I go straight tunnel vision. I can't see or hear anything near me because I need to separate. Or I'm going to go and I'm going to smoke a blunt.
But I mean, sometimes you do come in and talk with me about what the problem is.
If I'm not as aggravated at that point, if I haven't gotten to the point where I'm going to blow my top, like you know the difference between when I'm about to go live it in this bitch.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen that, but then you would also vent as well.
Sometimes I vent. Sometimes I can't, especially if you're the one who made me mad.
Wow.
Just like you, where you will get up and just leave and go spend some time away so that way you don't say the right thing. I'm going to go outside and I'm going to smoke a blunt, or I'm going to make myself a drink and I'm going to sit outside and drink my drink until I calm the fuck down. And then I'm going to come back in and talk to you, because at that point, if I open up my mouth, I'm going to say something that's going to get me in trouble.
Yeah, and I have to leave because I can't do what I need to do. And especially when you have a child or if you have children at home, and, you know, I can't just go and sit outside peacefully. I mean, there's no peace when you have children or whatever. So when I'm upset, I would like to lay down and meditate or whatever. Lay down and listen to some music or just do nothing. My whole point is to get everything out of my mind for an extended period of time. And you can't do that when you have children running around and they're just adding on top of your frustration.
So that goes back to the point that you made earlier. Not only do I pay attention to you when you're in those types of situations where I take our child away and I take the dogs away and I separate everyone from you to give you your time to calm down, but you do the same thing for me. When you see me flip my wig and I step outside, don't nobody come outside in the backyard. I think that has more to do with the fact that everybody in this house is afraid of me when I get that.
I am not afraid of you.
Not
but
you.
What I'm saying.
Not you, but the dogs and the kids are afraid of me when I get to that point.
Yeah, they are. Well, yeah, especially the dogs. The dogs, when they're not having that.
Ain't nobody trying to get near, the blazing thing of fire outside.
Yeah. Well, when you get to that point and you go out and sit out, and I know that you're upset, I just kind of keep everybody with me, just kind of give you your space. I don't think it really has to do with, being afraid or anything like that. I just think that you just need your time, just like I know I would need mine.
So the point that I was making with that is that that's a level of communication that's not spoken or not given directly to the person at that time. But that's a level of communication that's saying, I got you.
And it's learned, though.
Yeah,
if
it's
you
learned over
actually
time.
take the time to learn how that person is, what they need during certain times when their emotions are at a certain place. And once you learn that, you automatically know what to do when you see them in that type of mindset.
And I think for me, that's one of the most important things between us is that we've taken the time to learn each other, to figure out what's important, what we need to do, when we need to do it, how we can support each other when we're down and when we're up, and taking ownership of what we may do that may have caused the situation. Because, you are very honest when you are wrong, which, I will say in our relationship, maybe about 30% of the time. And I'm this other 70% because, I'm a guy. It is what it is.
Not to say that women are always right, but
no, because I can tell you some stories, and that's probably going to be honest with you, that'll lead into the next episode.
We're not getting into this.
But anyway, I think we should end it here because I think, we've kind of dropped a lot of gems on things that people really need to focus on that they may not have given attention to in their relationship that, kind of just goes over the head or in one ear and out the other,
I agree. I think that it's something that everybody should really think about, and everybody should be constantly working on with the person that they're with. Is something that is very important, and it just makes life so much easier if you can talk to your partner, your husband or your wife, like your best friend, and be that open source that really makes the relationship a lot better.
And fellas, this is just a little helpful tip. The better you are at your communication, the more sex you get.
Oh Lord,
it's the truth. It's the truth. Let's be honest. Let's be honest.
Okay, yeah, we're moving on from this, and we'll see you guys on the next episode.
Later.
Enjoyed this episode? Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on any future episodes. And check out our website at blackrelativity.com for additional info and discussions. Also, if you know someone that will like this content, take a screenshot and share it on social media. From the standard to the most controversial topic, we got you covered. This is Black Relativity.